I, coming from theater, I always believed that if I was in a major hit, number one at the box office, that would open up things. So Ghostbuster came out. It was number one for a long time. But I couldn't somehow, I don't know if the studios thought, I don't know what they thought, but I couldn't get arrested. And what it forced me to do was I was a single dad during that time. I had two sons. It forced me to look in other areas. For the first time I did commercials. I started doing voiceover, superheroes did it, and television because I couldn't get a film.
Folks, before we start this episode, if you could do one thing, would you please hit that subscribe button? It really helps us out. We'll kick those tires and start that fake fire. It's time to virtually camp. Sometimes we can't be together, but that's no excuse not to get together. Today, we welcome one of my all-time favorite actors, a man who's brought countless roles to the big and little screen, and he, of course, is the answer to the timeless question, if you have a dose of the freaky ghost, baby, who are you going to call? Please welcome the one Ghostbuster who has the physique capable of fighting paranormal activity, the one and the only, Mr. Ernie Hudson.
Great.
Welcome.
Hey, thank you. It's great to be able to sit down and have a conversation.
Well, it's been a while.
Yeah.
The fans should know what we went through to get to this point. It was a lot. There was probably some paranormal opposition here. So we had some, it's just the rule. Sometimes when it's important, technology fails. But I won't name names in case we need a sponsorship later. But Ernie, Thanks for being here, man. It's so good. And it's just cool. I think this is coming full circle. You met my mom 35 years ago hosting telethons for it was muscular dystrophy, right?
Muscular dystrophy, yeah. With Jerry Lewis's, they used to have every year. They don't do them anymore, but yeah.
Oh, that's cool. It was a small world. I love coming full circle. So, Mom, this one's for you. This is very exciting for the whole family. So we finally got a hold of Ernie. Well, we should dive in. I want to get to some deeper stuff, but I think first things first, we gotta check some of these boxes.
Sure.
So how excited are you? You have a new Ghostbusters coming out. How cool is that to be doing something, that started 30 years ago and now is be turned into this iconic franchise?
Yeah, it's been almost 40 years, actually.
40? Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, and I think it's 38 years ago when the movie came out. It's great to be a part of something that people really have embraced. And it's kind of a family thing. The movie crosses generations, and I see grandparents with their grandkids, and the grandkids are laughing, and the old people are laughing. And so it's I've done a number of movies that's very popular with a certain age group, but Ghostbusters just sort of covers, all the bases. And when I meet people, I see how happy they are, the enthusiasm, and no matter where I am in the world, people just really embrace this movie, and I'm very, very thankful to have been a part of it.
Now, I think I've heard you say this in a couple interviews, and I just think it's really interesting to note that you mentioned that in the long run, Ghostbusters has been a tremendous blessing, et cetera. But in the short term, that actually was kind of an impediment to getting some roles, which I found fascinating.
Yeah, I don't quite to this day understand why.
Yeah.
I think the studio, when they came out with the movie, I felt they did certain things to make sure that I wasn't a part of the Ghostbusters. They were the Ghostbusters, and then they brought Winston in. And so both of those movies, I came in halfway through the movie. I wasn't on the poster. It was like, okay, you're there, but you're not there. But the amazing thing is, kids really identified with the character. The kids who, the other guys were kind of nerdy and they were doctors, and Winston's just a guy looking for a job. Yeah. And I think a lot of kids, black, white, that's totally related to the character. It's kind of down to earth sense. And I think the studio was surprised to see Winston was as popular as he was. He's one of the best selling toys. and that was yeah, that was kind of different. But I was a little surprised that, but kids really identified with the character. I can't remember what the first part of the question was, but
No,
so
yeah. So it's funny. You said that for like 10 years. You said after that, it's like
oh
you couldn't get a
yeah,
role, and then you said the same thing when you did Ghostbusters 2. It happened again.
yeah, no. So when I say the studio, I felt they didn't quite include the character, but when the movie came out, and it was so big. I coming from theater, I always believed that if I was in a major hit, number one at the box office, that would open up things. So Ghostbuster came out. It was number one for a long time, but I couldn't somehow. I don't know if the studios thought I don't know what they thought, but I couldn't get arrested. And what it forced me to do was I was a single dad during that time. I had
Hmm.
two sons. It forced me to look in other areas. For the first time, I did commercials. I started doing voiceover, superheroes. I did and television because I couldn't get a film. It took me about 3.5 years. Weeds with Nick Nolte came up, and I got that movie. And then I did 7 or 8 movies back to back. I'd leave one set to go to another production, and then we did Ghostbusters 2, and the exact same thing happened. It was just nothing going in film until The Hand That Rocks the Cradle came. Um, but and I don't know if people thought I was a comedian or to this day I don't totally understand what was going on.
Yeah, it's fascinating because you would think, and I guess that happens sometimes when you're in an iconic role like that, and I think you. I mean, did you have any idea? I mean, you said that you recognized the script was awesome. Obviously, I definitely want to hear what it was like to work with Dan and Bill and Harold. But did you have any idea it would turn into a thing where grown men would dress in jumpsuits 40 years later at Halloween?
No, yeah, no, I well, it seems like in those days, and even it's changed now with all the streaming, but in those days, a movie would come out, it'd be number one in the box office for a week or two, and then we'd go on to the next thing. And, we're not talking about it anymore. The thing with Ghostbusters, it was number one for a number of weeks. It ran, seemed like that whole summer. But, and then when it sort of, it just stayed with fans. It never went away. Fans always sort of kind of embraced it. Now, the cartoons kind of helped, but and I was surprised that 5 years later, 10 years later, 15 years, 20 years later, people were still dressing up in their Ghostbuster jumpsuits, turning their cars into ectomobiles. Um, it was just a phenomenon that just to this day, if I'm traveling and somebody finds out they'll show up in a Ghostbuster jumpsuit and a backpack. I've seen people with tattoos of Ghostbusters, my character, on their bodies, you know, uh, which is a little different. And but I'm humbled that people find it's a beautiful little movie and the concept. Um, but yeah, I no, we had no idea. I don't think anybody could have guessed that. But I did think it would be a hit. I just didn't think that we'd be talking about it almost 40 years later.
What's it like as an actor when you see like your first, and I know Ghostbusters wasn't your first, but like when you see yourself up on the screen, on the big screen, is there like a just a moment? Because obviously you worked so hard and you had to go through so much to get those parts. I mean, it was 10 years it sounded like of acting, and just not bearing a lot of fruit, and then finally when you see yourself up on the big screen, I mean, what does that feel like?
Yeah, I don't know. It's yeah, it's never been like a big deal. Like I kind of, oh my God, I finally got, because I was always sort of striving
Mm,
for something better. So even though I'm in the movie, I think the first movie I did was Gordon Parks' Leadbelly,
mm-hmm.
but I was always looking for the next thing. In fact, now that I'm older, I really wish I had shut that critic in me up and been able to really appreciate what was happening at the time. I was always looking ahead to something else. So,
Mm.
um, but it's always nice when people respond positively to a character that you're doing. But yeah, I was always waiting for the big break that never really came.
Hmm.
To this day, I'm still looking for the big break to happen. But I started acting in 1966, and I've made a living. Only thing I've ever done is acting. So I've been able to make a living for over 50 years doing what I do. But I've always been sort of looking for that time when my time would come. You
Hmm.
know, yeah. So yeah.
That's awesome, man. Um, what was so? How was your chemistry with Bill and Dan? And I'm curious if you could share any anecdotes of. Obviously, right now the internet abounds with Bill Murray anecdotes that border on the apocryphal of him stealing a hamburger and telling you, walking up to strangers and taking a hamburger and saying you'll go on tell someone they'll never believe you. And then whereas Dan, I haven't heard from too much, but I'm curious, what was the chemistry like, and what was it like working with those guys?
Well, it was, I was sort of the odd man out. I mean, these guys had worked together on Saturday Night Live. They had worked up in Canada. They had known each other for years. Um, so it was almost like they were family. In the
Hmm.
same way a family is, they love each other one moment and they're pissed at each other the next moment. And I was an actor. I wasn't a comedian. I didn't come from that, improv theater. Even though I'd done stuff like that, but it wasn't. So it was a little bit of being outside, and I think that one of the reasons I probably got the part is there are many people who I don't get along with. I mean,
Hmm.
I'm pretty easygoing, and I think that was important to. I know it was important to Ivan Reitman. But I love the guys. They were always available, and even though I felt a little excluded from the studio, I never felt that from the guys. And Harold Ramis was always the guy. He was kind of the glue that held it all together. So anytime anything got weird, Harold would always say Ernie, and he would kind of, just, explain things. Bill Murray is, I mean, he's just an original. He does stuff that if I tried, I'd get arrested. But he's the only guy I used to tease him about. He's the only guy I ever met who you can't bribe. I mean, there's a certain point when I'm like, okay, how much money is it? I know that. Yeah, okay, for that I'll do this. But I think Bill is he has his principle. He has his and yeah, he's just very uniquely different and funny in a quirky way. Danny is, working with him. He's always very professional, always taking it very serious. When we set up a gag, he worked very hard to make sure that, whereas that Bill just sort of flows and he was just sort of in the moment. But they were all great, all very different. Everybody treated me, very like family, and I feel very close to them. Sigourney Weaver was always truly amazing. We were, I guess, at Yale grad school around the same time, but I just love her so much because she is genuinely who she is, and I've always appreciated that. So it was a great group, but the guys were always, yeah, just having fun. We had fun. I'm not a practical joker, so. Um, but yeah, it was great. And also I'm not the kind of guy who, gets on the set and hang out. And I don't drink, so I'm not. I've never been, one of those guys who beyond the work spend a lot of time together. But I'll grab dinner if I run into Bill Murray or Danny. If there's time to grab dinner, but I'm not. I'm not going over their house. I, I don't hang out that way. It's just me, and I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to invite myself
Oh,
to
well, yeah.
things.
I feel like with Bill, you just be like, "Hey, I'm coming over, man," but just see what
Yeah,
happens.
no, yeah, Billy's, yeah, Bill, he would. But there's a sense of, freedom that I don't know if it's because being African American. I can't just walk up in somebody's house without people being alarmed. I have a good friend. We'll be in New York, and we'll go to a restaurant. He'll go in the kitchen and meet the cook, and he'll just assume that it's the world is his.
Hmm.
Whereas I'm a little bit, I think being a kid, I was about 7 or 8 years old. I was in a store and I was about to leave, and I was accused of stealing something, which I didn't. So the security guard came, and they made a big deal out of it, and they searched me and patted me down, and it was really embarrassing because I didn't have anything. Um, and they kind of apologized afterwards, but
Hmm.
I've always, and I think a lot of Black people feel when we're, because the people will assume. So a lot of times I would be in a place where my hands are, I don't dig in my pockets for something because I don't want to give the wrong impression. And now, I know better, but I'm always a little bit aware. But and I always admired that freedom that Bill Murray would have. We'd see fans, he'd walk up to women and grab them and hug them and joke. And,
Wow.
I'm, because it was a different time. It was before Me Too as well. So, but, and people just a lot, people would, you know, drive down the street and slam on their brakes and jump out of the car and run over. And people just loved him. And he embraced people in a way, but he always had a freedom that I never really felt that, that I could afford, because I'm always aware that somebody might misinterpret,
Yeah.
what I'm doing. My wife always tells me, tell people when you're joking, because people don't always know. And
Wow.
but
Do you feel
I
that's
do
gotten
admire him.
better? Do you feel that's do you feel that you have? I mean, that's interesting. So that's interesting. You felt you haven't had the freedom per se, over those years, and less so than guys like Bill. And do you feel that over time that that's changed, or and still a long ways to go, or?
Well, it's changed somewhat, but there's still a long way to go. Just in terms of, I think for a lot of people, I've lived in places where I'm definitely in a minority, communities. There are a lot of communities where they don't even come in contact with Black people or
Mhm.
people different than what they are. So basically, they get what they see on TV, and most of the representation, certainly for American Blacks, is the negative. They see these stories about, the home without a father, or somebody's on drugs, or somebody, and that if that's what people kind of expect. And so when I move into it, I buy a house. I've, I've been in my house, and somebody, would come and ask me as an owner here, and I'm like, dude, so there's always a little of that. I was shooting a movie years ago. I think we did Leadbelly. We shot it in just outside of Austin, Texas, and I had a great time. Everybody was really nice to me. The people, the whites in the community, and I was telling my brother, who would travel with me, and I said, man, the people are really nice down here. I've noticed, the share, everybody's like really cool. And he said, yeah, for you, try being me.
Hmm.
And over the years, we'd go places, and we're the only ones there. People are very nice to me because I'm in the entertainment business, and they recognize me from something.
Hmm.
But when he's on his own, it's a whole different kind of response, a certain kind of protectiveness, and I would always, when I move into, I bought a lot of houses over the years, and I think it takes a while for people to, I'm not asking for anything. I don't need to be invited to the party. I'm very self-sufficient. you know, um, I'm not trying to borrow a cup of sugar. I'm good, and when people kind of relax and realize that you're not there to take something, whatever that is, they're just much more open. But I think I think it's gotten better. But I know when I first started acting, I knew if I went into an audition and I didn't make somebody laugh, the chance of me getting that role was not very good. I had to kind of go in and kind of put people at ease. I don't think my friends who weren't black felt that way. Um, I also felt that, and I was in a pretty good physical condition, but if there was a woman in the room who complimented me on my physique or whatever, I'm probably not going to get the role. So it was always a little bit of awareness, not so much where you just alter your life, but aware that it's a little different, uh, situation, and that just natural freedom to just flow and be is it's yeah, you never kind of get past that. And I think probably it's like when the police will stop you. Now we've seen a lot of the police stuff, but I know that I can't just speak to this guy the way, say, my friend would. I know that I got to read the signals. I can't, do anything that could be confusing. And that's
Wow.
kind of unfortunate. Not kind of unfortunate, it's very unfortunate.
Yeah, it is, and it's yeah. I guess we have a long ways to go still. I
But as long as we're willing to understand that we have a long way to go and we're willing to go, what the problem becomes is that people who are resistant to and want to go back. And I'm like, dude, I can't go back. But because so I think that's, for me, that's the problem. As long as we know that, yeah, we can improve, we can get better, um, then it's not a problem. We don't have to be all the way there, but know that we're on this journey for, you know, to become better human beings. But when I see people so locked in and resistant to change, and want to hold on to a system that's unfair, that becomes a problem.
yeah, yeah, man. Um, well, it's funny. You mentioned people compliment you for Zeke. You're like, I'm not going to get the part. I will say, I remember those, like, I was going to ask, man, what was Ernie's fitness plan? Because I was like, man, dude, like, I was like, is it egg whites? I mean, is it Jack LaLanne, or what's the secret, man? Because I was like, all the other Ghostbusters, I mean, they're, Egon aside, he's doing what he needs to do. But I mean, Bill and Dan, great, but
Yeah.
carry the pack. But Winston, I was like, Winston's got the guns, man. So
Well,
were you a big
it's
fitness buff, man?
it's I have a son who's been doing martial arts since he was 3. Loves to work out. He's 56 now, but he loves the gym. He lives in the gym, and I've always admired that because I don't. I hate working out.
Really?
Yeah, no, God is, if so, I can't take credit. I can go in the gym and work out for a week, and I'm feeling pretty good. Most of the trainers, I felt like I looked like I was in better shape than they were.
And that's what matters.
So I never, and I'm an actor. I don't have to be there. I just have to look that way.
That's right.
So, yeah, no, but I'm always aware that I can't let things get too far to hand. Certainly things when weight, whenever over the years, I felt like, oh, no, 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 I'm not going to be that guy. So I would go on fast. If I have to stop eating, whatever I have to do, I'm not going to be, that. I'm always aware, and I do a little, basic, stretching, or push-ups or whatever to try. And but I'm not. I don't spend a lot. It's funny. I have a big gym in my house, but I don't spend a lot of time there. So
That's fine. That's a more a ceremonial gym,
yeah, yeah.
A decorative workout room.
Yeah, no, I always go, if I'm going to do that someday. If I want to, I know it's there, but the reality is that.
Um,
Yeah.
I have to ask, just because it is Halloween time as we're recording this, etc., and obviously you have some iconic lines in there with some end time shit. I'm curious, you're a pretty spiritually aware person, and I know Dan is, in particular. I keep calling
Yeah.
him Dan, like we're old buddies, Dan and I.
Right.
But Dan, in particular, had an interest and fascination with a lot of the supernatural, and I'm
Yeah.
curious. Have you, either prior to or doing that afterwards, have you ever encountered anything sort of, otherworldly or sort of Twilight Zoney? Have you ever had a moments that you're just like, ooh, like that's a little like, raise them eyebrows, you know?
Well, yeah, I find it interesting because a lot of these ghost hunting groups sort of came after watching Ghostbusters, really took it seriously, and so you see all the people come up and say,
Yeah.
I hunt for ghosts after seeing Ghostbusters when I was a kid, and but I grew up in a family that believed very seriously in ghosts and spiritual things and visitations, and so you know you didn't play with it. So oh, it'd be fun. We're going to go. I'm like, no, I don't
Yeah.
want to invite any ghosts to come visit. I'm good.
Yeah.
And yeah, over my life, I've had things that I can't explain, and I felt, probably I've told this story before, but when I was maybe about 7 years old, we would always hear this. We were in this house, and we would hear things moving around, And my grandmother, who raised me, would go to church and leave me with my brother, who was 3 years older. But as soon as she left, he would kind of leave the house and go hang out with his friends. So I was there by myself, and would always freak out because I hear somebody upstairs. And there was a stairwell. You couldn't see who was on until they got to the landing. But I heard somebody moving around upstairs, and then you could hear them walk to the stairs, and they started coming down. You could hear it was, and I just freaked out and ran out of the house. And when my grandmother got home from church, and I'm sitting out there in the dark, freezing on the curb, and but when I ran out of the house, I looked back, and there was a window right at the top of the stairs, and there was a woman there. And it just kind of, it not kind of freaked me, it really freaked me out. I mean, I saw this woman, just for a moment, she was like standing there staring at me, and so I was sitting out there, and my grandmother came and said, no, try to get me to go back in the house. I'm like, no, I'm not, no, I don't want to go back. I'm not going back. There's, and then she said it was my mother who died when I was 3 months old, that my mother was always looking out for me and guiding and protecting me, and that was my mother. But if she would never want to do anything that made me uncomfortable, and if I didn't want her to appear or be there, that she would honor that, and she wouldn't, and so she wouldn't bother me anymore. And I'm like, yeah, just I don't want to, because.
I'm a
freaked
hard
out.
pass.
Yeah, thank you, but no, thank you. And
Wow.
it never happened again. But I've always felt, the presence of, and my career, I've always believed that I've been guided by, that universal force. It may include my mother or whoever, but because I never had the answers to figure things out on my own. I've always known that. I believe that if you do the work and prepare, an opportunity out of wherever would come. But yeah, no, I remember a lady, she would speak in tongues. She was an old lady who was kind of I don't think they called her a witch, but people were a little bit afraid of her. And I remember one day at church, she started saying the Lord was going to go through this place, and he was gonna, people want to die, and it was like she just freaked everybody out, and she was naming names, and those people started dying, and it was like,
Wait, that is like
so
she called out people's names, and then like later on they
yeah,
would full
yeah,
on.
in a short period of time, yeah, it was like this sort of, and so I go, I don't want to find the ghosts or whatever.
I ain't afraid of no ghosts.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh man, you got to call Ray Parker Jr. Man, y'all are buddies, right?
Yeah. I've known Ray. Well, actually, we met doing Ghostbusters. I think we had that little dance down the street.
Yeah.
And he's for the longest time he was a neighbor of mine. I've since moved away from that where I was living, but yeah, I really like Ray a lot. He's a great guy, and, very talented musician. I mean, just a good human being.
Oh man, that song.
And that
Are you?
song is so iconic. I mean,
It's so good. I was listening to it on the treadmill earlier today, just prepping, getting in the right headspace, But I love that. I mean, it's a jam, and I know there's a discrepancy, and I love Huey Lewis too. And I
Yeah.
know that, but that's not Ray's fault. That's the studio's fault. And you know what? I play it for some of my producer friends, and I'll say, listen to "I Want a New Drug," and then
Right.
listen to Ghostbusters, and what do you think? And they're
Yeah.
like, ah, and like, yeah, there's a little like bass line in the back, like I could see it, but it's
Right.
like, come on,
Yeah.
it's just,
Well, it's interesting that Huey Lewis, who I'm also a fan of, they won that lawsuit,
yeah,
but the lawsuit was against the studio.
yeah.
And so I think the studio wanted Ray to say, well, since, you should. Ray like, no, dude, I'm not in this, so um, yeah. So, there's so many similarities, and sometimes you get an inspiration, you don't know where it comes from. So I know there was no intentional whatever. But you're right. In the bass, you can barely hear a little kind of. But the song, of course, people wherever I go, I've heard it so much. But I still love the song. I think it's great.
Well, I think you told a story too that Ray had that as his answering machine at one point,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It
like leaning into it. I like it. Just
right. Yeah, yeah. No, it's just embrace it. And I've heard the song probably has made nearly as much money as the movie has over the years because it's used so much. And
dang.
it's so identified with the film that I think even in the movie that Paul Feig did with the Lady Ghostbusters, I don't know if they really wanted to use the song, but I think it's so identified with Ghostbusters, you just have to you have to include it, So
Well, I loved the trailer for Ghostbusters for Afterlife, but I was waiting for just a few keys on the piano of
right,
do 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 do. Like it just, I thought. I mean, obviously, I've made zero trailers and made no major motion pictures, but I thought, oh man, if they had just like strummed the guitar, like anything to hint to that, I was like, the audience would have gone nuts,
yeah,
just to
yeah.
just to get you going.
Well, I think the studio is aware that it costs money,
Yeah, those
So
fair use, man, right?
yeah, and Ray is like, hey, so and I
Wow.
look at his house and I go, okay, that's what Ghostbusters song bills. I mean,
I know we're in the wrong
I'm so
business,
happy
man.
for
We
him.
need to, yeah, we need to come up with a, just theme song for something else.
Right.
And man,
Yeah.
all right. So let me ask you. So you going back just because I'm blown away at this. Your grandma's an extremely spiritual woman, right? And
Yeah.
extremely and devout Christian, right?
Yeah, very, very devout.
But she had a
Church.
framework for a woman dwelling in a spirit in your house that seems to be a little incompatible, you
Well,
know?
no, it's because I think some of maybe the modern, but when you're Pentecostal churches, it was very tied into spirits and all that. And I remember we would go visit my aunt in Elgin, Illinois, which is a suburb, kind of a suburb of Chicago. We go there and we spend a few weeks. But they lived in this really abandoned sort of kind of warehouse. It used to be a huge factory, and the front part of it was like an apartment they occupied, but the rest of the building was like really abandoned with all this metal. And it was maybe, I don't know, 6 stories high. It was this huge building. And my brother and I, we would climb up to the top, and we were doing all kinds of stupid stuff. And my grandmother showed up out of nowhere, and she said, I'm coming to get my kids. And my aunt was saying, like, why? Then she said, no, my mother appeared to her one night and said, go and get my children. They're in danger. And we didn't have a car. She got somebody in a truck to bring her from Michigan to Illinois and got us. And me and my brother, we talked about it because my uncle had some guns, and we would sneak the guns out and shoot them and put them back before he got home from work. So we were doing a lot of dumb stuff. But I remember her coming. She wasn't playing. It's like, no, they're coming home. And
Wow, that's so
so
interesting. I mean, because I know a little bit about like Pentecostal traditions, and it's interesting because in modern Christianity, it seems that like there's zero tolerance for any sort of spirit or the occult or anything. But it seems like it is fascinating to hear, like, because I would have been like, oh, I mean, most of my Pentecostal friends are like, "Hey, there's a woman upstairs moving stuff around." They'd be like, "Well, you know who we need to call?" So Ernie and also your local exorcist. But it's
Yeah.
interesting to hear that there's like a framework for sort of a benevolent,
Yeah,
security.
because spirits weren't thought of as necessarily bad. That we're always connected. I think the African tradition as well. You know, you honor your ancestors because they're alive, and and so it's not just the evil ones coming to we see in the movies to you know snatch your life or something. We're guided and overlooked, and in traditions where you speak the names of your ancestors, the whole, the way the Mexicans, honor the Day of the Dead, and because it's not a negative thing, it's who we are. You let go of your physical body, but the spirit is always, always there, even though we can't experience it with our five senses, but you're always aware. But I also believe that you can turn that off. You can just say, nope, I'm just deny it. But if for people who open themselves up to those experiences, but most people's like, even if something really strange happened, they go, that didn't happen. It's got to be a reason. It was just, so,
Wow.
but I do believe there's something beyond our five senses. I mean, if we can't experience it with our five senses, then we just think it doesn't exist. But we found a lot of things that we couldn't, experience that is there, and I think that's a part of it. I think we're more than what we appear to be. Certainly, these bodies, but that's just my belief. But I have no doubt that there are things going on that also influence who we are and how we are in this life experience. Um, like I said, most of the opportunities that have come along that have helped me didn't come from places. I mean, I'm expecting it to come from over here, and it would come out of nowhere. I mean, we're all connected, and then somebody, someone's like the guy who owes you money, he doesn't pay you money, but then someone will come up and present something to you that's life changing. And so I don't, I realized early on that I didn't have to figure out, I just had to be very clear about what I wanted. Most people I talk to, if you ask what they want, they don't know. They can tell you a million things that they don't want. They hate this, they don't want that. They say, well, what do you really want? That's a little bit harder to find. But when you know what you want and you ask, the universe responds. It's in the Bible, it's in all traditional religions. Asking is given, but you got to be clear with the asking. And I know, growing up poor in the projects, and we were as poor as I suppose you can get, even though I've never ever felt a lack of love. So I never really felt poor. But my grandmother's belief that there is a presence that looks out for me is, I know why I am where I am because I've never doubted that. I know who I am, and I know that if I bring the truth and the best of me, that it responds. So, and that's always been it. There's never been a time. There've been times I've been disappointed, and certainly, the Bible says, "Put not your trust in man." I never trusted this industry to even want to invite me in, but I believe that the universe always found a way, and I trust that.
Yeah, I saw you gave a talk a while back, and you quoted, and I hopefully I get this correct, that your grandma said that God is everyone's father, but not everyone knows that.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm watching out for that, and I thought that was so cool, considering that because your father died right when you were very, very young, right?
Well, my mom died when I was 3 months old, but she got pregnant away in East St. Louis, and the family had moved to Michigan. But when she went to East St. Louis, she befriended a lady who she stayed with, and the lady the lady had tuberculosis. And my mom, when the lady got really sick, was there taking care of her, and she contracted tuberculosis.
Wow.
And when she got really sick, while she was carrying me, she had this disease, and tuberculosis was like the number one killer back in the early 40s. So she came up north to be with her family to give birth to me. And I was born in December and she died in March. But so because she was away from the family, nobody knew who my dad was. And so it was always a big issue with me, like, why don't I have a father? Because even my friends whose father didn't live with them, they at least knew their father. My brother, who's a half brother, he knew who his father was. But I didn't know. I didn't know. So my grandma, her thing is, well, God is your father. God is, and that's who we all are. But it's like having money in the bank. You have to know it's there to be able to call upon it. So as long as you know, then you don't have to take a backseat to anyone. You don't have to, you're whatever you asked for, you're worthy of. And so I've never questioned that. The biggest part for me was figuring out what I was going to do. But in terms of, it's we all have that. But a lot of people, even when I say that, don't believe or think I'm nuts to say God is my father. I'm like, well, God is their father. It's like, no, I'm, whatever. I don't know.
Man, because you mentioned too that you've talked about, I think you mentioned praying boldly and how you were just, and asking, and, the Bible says, you have not because you ask not, and that I think you made a joke earlier that earlier you were just praying to get by, and you're like, no, I've actually, if I can, because if you get an ask, might as well make it a big one, right?
Right, yeah. When I decided to become an actor, I saw a play and, oh my God, I was so blown away. And it was just too big of a prayer to even that I could possibly do that. It was, and then I took this, I needed an elective, so I took this acting class. And when I walked on stage, I was at home. I just knew that this is where I belong. And so my prayer was, okay, God, just let me do this for a living, and I'll honor it, because I think when you're given something, you should honor it. It's not take it for granted. I'm not going to show up late for work. I'm not going to show up unprepared. I will always give thanks, and from that moment, like I said, I've always made a living as an actor. I was talking to some friends, Joy Montana, Joy Pantoliano, Tim Daly. We were all having dinner, and they were talking about different jobs they had along the way when things were tough. They worked as. I've never had to do that. I've always been able to make a living. But in saying that prayer, sometimes I think, well, maybe I should have asked for more money. I was I just want to work. Maybe I should say, what you asked for, but just to be blessed to be able to do this is, and I'm still, just so, this business has been very, very good to me. And a lot of people will come up and say, they'll find fault, Ernie, there's so much more to do and so much more to go through, and they don't have this for, and they should do that. And I'm like, you know what? I really can't complain, because I've always, I've always found a place in the industry. I'm not saying that it's not, but I've been very, very blessed. And so I don't have any real criticisms. And I don't think because I'm so good, at whatever, but I think I am good at what I do. But I do trust the universe to deliver.
As a parent, have you often sworn that you want to minimize screen time? Let's be honest, you're gonna cave. Why not let your kids do something useful on the tablet, like Vooks, the online streaming library of kids-safe, ad-free books that are read aloud to your child. Let's talk to two actual bookworms.
Like worms.
What do you guys think of books? Oh, wow. That's amazing.
I can actually do it way better.
That's probably not necessary. That's amazing. All right, Jeb, do you like books?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
Jeb,
Yes.
what's the last book that you watched?
You're not scared.
am not scared.
What are you scared of?
Bad guys.
I'm scared of spiders.
If I'm a friend with spiders, I will like it.
You-
Spider.
Max, it's your turn to pick a book. Ruckus on the Ranch? What's that about? Causing a ruckus on the ranch. Causing a ruckus on the ranch. Did you actually read the words?
Yeah.
Is that why you're so smart?
No.
No? You're causing a ruckus on the set. You're causing a ruckus on the set. Head on over to join.vooks.com/redeem. Enter promo code WENTCAMPING for $25 off your Vooks subscription, which is basically 6 months of free Vooks. That's amazing. Do it now.
All right, so it's been, I mean, you mentioned you did this. You mentioned you had a 56-year-old son, and we'll grant you had children at a very young age. So that we'll put you some, let the listeners do the math if they will. So you've seen a thing or two now, right? All right, so looking back now over 4 decades of acting, and what are some of the biggest observations or life lessons that you feel have kind of crystallized over that's a big question, but it's been, I'm just curious if something has emerged over the training, like, man, that has proven time and time again true. And I would go back and I would tell young Ernie, man, hear me out on this,
Yeah, I think, like I said, you grow up and you believe that what you have isn't enough, that you want something bigger, better. You have this idea of, if I, you see people and you kind of go, man, if I had that house, or if I had that car, or, then I'd be happy. That would be my happiness. And so you're never really quite happy with what you have, because you're always thinking, I should aspire for something more. Even if it's something that you really love, you think, well, you should have more because people think you should have more. I think for me, I would have really, to understand that it was okay to love what I love, to like what I like, to not, I might like something, but it's not the right brand, or somebody might not approve. My wife and I have been together for 45 years, and it took 9 years. And part of that was, she wasn't the one that people felt that I should be with. And I kind of, that it was okay to love. Now I'm at this stage in life where I'm so appreciative and so thankful for her being in my life. And I wish I could have accepted. I could have saved myself a lot of time. I grew up in a way where guys, I was taught, this is how you get a woman. This is how you're supposed to be. This is what being a man. And I was always trying to do stuff that really wasn't me, that I wasn't really comfortable with, but I felt that's what I had to do because that was being a man. And I kind of go, you know what? I wasted a lot of time trying to be this that I never was to begin with. It was, to just allow myself to love what I love, even though somebody else might not approve of it, or somebody else might think, oh, you should have. And being an actor, a lot of people come on, oh, you're an actor, you ought to have this, and I can't believe you don't have that. I'm kind of going, you know what, I'm good. I don't, but it took me a while to, to understand that, a long while. And I, like I said, I think I wasted a lot of years behaving sometimes badly, but doing it because that was what I felt you're expected to do. I see sometimes people get in the industry and they'll kind of be outrageous, and I kind of go, why? Because they believe I'm an actor now, so I'm supposed to have this attitude. And I'm like, no, this has nothing to do with, stopping production or running off the set. And I'm like, why are you behaving it? Because now I'm in position, this is what you're supposed to be, and and you're supposed to find that part of you that's genuine and love that. I know there was kind of but that's kind of where there are a lot of things I look back on, but and there's some things you look back on and you kind of go, I'm glad I understood certain things. I have my two older boys. When my marriage ended, they came to live with me. And the one thing I wanted more than anything, I didn't grow up wanting to be an actor or whatever. I don't think I had any job in mind, but what I wanted to do more than anything was to be a dad. And of all the things I've done in my life, I think I was a good dad. I know that I did everything I knew to do. Now I realize you can't control what happens to kids, but I know that I was there. I know that in a way that nobody was ever there for me. And I wanted to be, to make that difference. So yeah, my career, I kind of go, maybe if I had done this and whatever, but I know I've been a good father. I really believe that. Now, I don't necessarily mean my kids might agree with that, but I know in my heart, I've always done the best I could.
Is being a parent, I mean, I'm now at the age where a lot of my friends are having kids now, and I just, there's a line from Parent Trap. You remember that movie with Keanu Reeves and Steve Martin, and it's like, and Keanu Reeves is like, you know what? You need a license to fish, you need a license to hunt, you need a license to drive a car, but they'll let anybody be a parent. And I'm thinking about that going, it's fun seeing all my friends who are brand new, and we're so hard on our parents, and then we go, wait, this kid pops out, and then you get 24 hours and you take it home, and it's like, and the doc's like, good luck.
Yeah.
You rinse, repeat, and do that 4 times,
Yeah. No, I think, but I think there's something that I understood maybe because I didn't have a dad, is that, till death do you part. It doesn't really apply to a mate, because you can always get a divorce. You can always say, hey, we're all responsible. I'll see you later. Good luck. But when it comes to kids, it really is till death do you part. I mean, you got to show up and you got to be there. You got to make sure, and it pulls out the best in you. There were times when I go into an audition and I felt like I didn't do a good job. I'd go, wait a minute, let me do that again. I need this job because my kids have to eat. I can go without eating. I can, there are a lot of things I'm willing to, if I have to, I'll sleep on a park bench, but my kids are never going to sleep on a park bench. And I think having my children demanded that I be a better person. And I see a lot of guys who, don't take that responsibility, walk away from it. And I see a lot of people who feel that I won't be able to do this but kids, it makes you more. And I'm so thankful that I didn't run away from that, because I could have said, you know what, I'm not taking the kids. And because I came out to LA, I didn't have a place to stay. I really had no money. I got 2 boys, but I knew that my kids, they're not going to suffer, because I always tell my kids, the difference between me and you is you have me. I didn't have a me in my life. So wow.
I love hearing that. It's just because, so basically what you're telling me is all the sleep deprivation, the uncertainty, the colds, flus, and other ailments that you'll catch because they're going to just give that right on to you. It's all the diapers, the crap all over the place, the throw up, and the ruined vacation. It's all worth every minute of it.
It's worth every minute of it, but don't do it because you think you're going to get a payment or even appreciation, because they may grow up and blame you for anything. I don't care how good a job you do.
That's right.
We all have this struggle, and my second son, he told me about something. It was just awful, and I did this awful thing, and I go, well, what did I do? Because I know I didn't hit him or anything. And he said, no, it was the way you looked at me. So.
Oh, we're screwed then. Well, I guess, yeah. You know what? And well, just remind him how many hours of sleep you. That's my biggest fear with kids, is that The other day I had to catch an early flight and I had like 4 hours of sleep. And I know some parents like I would kill for 4 hours on one night. And I was like, I'm like, how do people do this? Like,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, no,
everyone says there's a gene that gets activated. Like when you look at your son or daughter and you're just like, there's something that was like unlocked that you're like, I will
Yeah.
die for this person. I will do whatever I have to do. It's not about Ernie or Ryan anymore. It's about
Right.
this person.
Yeah, I think so. My grandmother, I mean, wasn't, she was my grandmother, but I don't think there was ever a time in my life that I doubted that she would lay down her life for me.
Mm.
And she would step in front of a bus if it meant protecting me. I just always, and I feel that way about my wife now, whether she'll do it or not.
Someday she might push you in the bus, right? There's
but I believe she would. I mean, I feel very blessed. I've always felt loved. I meet a lot of people who maybe never felt that. But it's something, being a parent, you're more of. And like I said, the kids will grow up and all my boys are different. They're not even close to being alike, but yeah, there. I see my oldest son, and I get flashes of when he was a baby, and I'm holding him when I, first brought him home from the hospital, and that's always there. It's always a part of.
Oh, that's awesome. All right, so I have to ask you now too. You have enough experience now, a little marriage wisdom. I am curious. With your wife, do you remember your opening line? Did you have some cool game? Was it? I'm curious y'all's story. She was a flight attendant, right?
Yeah, she was a flight attendant when we met. I was doing a play in the theater. Downstairs was this nightclub, and there was a lady who came to see the play, and her cousin was in the show, and she wanted to meet me. And I met the girl, and I really wasn't particularly interested. And so but the girl was kind of persistent. And so, I'm sorry. So my cousin came to visit me, and then I got a call from the girl and her cousin saying, can we get together? And I thought, for my cousin's sake, because maybe he might like the girl. So we decided to meet at this nightclub. And so I go in the nightclub, and when I walk in, I see this girl sitting at this table, and I was just mesmerized, I guess. And so we go in, and I said hello, and I started talking. And I sat down, and I was there the whole night. And the girl that we came, because I told the one girl that I'll meet you, but I only got a little time because I'm writing, and I can only stay for a few minutes. And I said that because they were really upset. But now she likes to tell people that she introduced me to my wife. But yeah, we just kind of hit it off, and my wife had she seemed to be really clear on her commitment. She never seemed to waver. I never felt that she questioned. There were times when I questioned. I was like, it took me 9 years to propose marriage, but
9 years.
Yeah, 9 years. Because I'd been married before to my older boy's mom.
You got married at 18 the first time, right?
Yeah, first time. Yeah, I was 18. Okay. Yeah.
So naturally, there was some probably reticence to jump back in again because you had to go.
Oh, it was. When marriage works, it's a wonderful thing. When marriage doesn't work, it's a nightmare. And and it was not a good marriage. We were basically kids. I was 18, she was 16, and wow. We were, and as we started to grow, we just clashed a lot. And I grew up in church believing that once you say, I do, and you make this vow before God, that's it. There's no more choosing. You got to live with that choice. So I never felt like it was okay for me to end it. Um, and I would ask her, is this working for you? Because if we both agreed to end it, but she never would admit that. I'm like, yeah, because you're crying an awful lot, so it can't be fun. So, but then it finally came to an end. So I thought I never want to go through that with ever again. But my experience with my wife now has been totally different from that first marriage.
All right, so Ernie's wisdom, now having had the experience of getting married young and not having any clue what's going on. And some people make it work, right? Some people, I mean, historically, people got married, super young, and they got it. And I know people got married at, 20, and they're 40 years later. It's like, wow. And then others get married. Yeah, I've noticed too, because I've seen some people now, some of my friends in their mid 30s get married later, and they're a little more set in their ways, and it's a little there's less of the kind of puppy love, like doughy eyed. It's sort of like, all right, this is almost like a business partnership / romantic relationship. Like, how are we gonna make this work? As opposed to, I love you, I'll never love anyone else. I've got eyes only for you. And everyone I talk to says that lasts for a time, and then you realize, like, actually not every, but most guys I've talked to, or my guy friends, they'll be like, yeah, there's always that moment where you get married, and there's that thing that you didn't notice during dating, and I'm sure the wives have the same thing, and they're like, oh, I missed that in the screening process, and that ain't going anywhere,
Yeah, no, you're right. It's and they say it was in the beginning the wife's an angel and the guy's a devil, but as you get older it switches, and so as I get older now, and I was never really that affectionate, like we're gonna hold hands and we're gonna do this whatever. But as I get older, I want to express how much and every time I try, my wife's looking at me like, what, really? So, but I go, I just want you to know just how much I just love and appreciate you. And she's like, okay, that's nice. Thank you.
You're like, you kidding me? That was good stuff right there. That was one take.
Yeah. And honestly, back in the day, I never could imagine me being that guy. But but it's kind of go, it's okay for me. I give myself permission to say, I really, really miss you. I would, certain things I would never do. Now it's like, I'm much more.
You're a softie now.
Affectionate, much more affectionate now, and wanting to. I'll even call friends and go, I just want to hear your voice. I just want you to know how much I appreciate, all that stuff,
Oh, well, that's awesome. I mean, so on that note, this is probably the greatest podcast you've ever done then, right? I mean, historically, this is,
And you know what? I mean, I was able to open up.
That's right.
I just love, and pour out my heart.
I just want to give you space I want to give you space to just, adore and honor. Yeah. Bill, Dan, coming for you guys. Wow. So, as far as picking someone to go, I love getting marriage advice from people who've done it and been around the block and know a thing or two. But what would you say now after years of marriage? You're saying, hey, this is how Ernie Hudson. This is my advice to you, how to pick out a mate.
Yeah, I think the most important thing is finding someone who you really like and your friendship, someone you can be friends with. Because when we have our friends, I got my buddies who we're friends, but they'll do something really stupid. But it's like my friend is a stupid guy. He can be stupid, but he's still my friend. I'm committed to him, even though he kind of, not always smart, but he's my friend. And with our mates, sometimes we're not as allowing, they do something really stupid or something that I go, I can't never forgive that. But I can forgive it in my friends because it's my friend, And I think that is the more than all the love and all that stuff, is this to be my grandmother. She was my friend. I could talk to her about anything. We did talk about any and everything. But, my wife, we can talk, we talk. So I think the friendship, and a lot of people, because you see someone and they're really attractive or they really, you respond to them, and you think that's not going to last, suddenly you'll notice things that is there, but you just missed. But my first wife had polio as a child, and her left hand was a bit deformed. I never saw that. I didn't see it until we were married. I'm like, really? And we were dated for a year. Because you see what you want to see, but I think the friendship and friends allow friends to grow up. And I think the reason that my wife and I are still together is because she allowed me the time to grow up. I don't know if I would have been as patient as she has been. But, and I know that my first wife and other women that I've known would never have, they would have left me a long time ago. But I think when you're friends with someone, you know their heart, you can see their humanity, and you know this person is worth the wait, worth the forgiveness, worth, you know who they are, as opposed to who you want them to be. And you want them to, be this thing, and then you'll be happy, and they're never the thing, and so you never feel like you're happy. And also, there's something else I'd say is don't rely on anybody else to make you happy. That's something you got to do for yourself, So, my wife is like, okay, I'm good. So, so how do I help you to be good? I mean, what do you need from me? Because if it's about opening doors, I'll open doors. Because I made up my mind to enjoy this life experience. And you might go through things, but if I can assist you, but you have to really count on, you got to find your space that's not dependent on anybody else behaving a certain way. I can only be happy if you understand me, if you listen to me. Nah, you got to find that within yourself, I think.
That's awesome. Last family question I have, and then I'll let you go soon. I have a couple more. I have a couple more current events questions for you. But do you have any traditions with your sons? Any father-son traditions y'all do?
Not as much as I'd like, and we used to. We with my older boys, I'm a single dad. I will say, raising my two older boys as a single dad is a whole different experience than raising the younger two with a mom.
Yeah.
Because kids depend on mom. I mean, they'll be with me and something happens. It's like, Mom, I'm like, dude, I'm here, so.
No, we got that. We need mom on this one.
Right. So but we would, every Sunday, I'd say we'd have church. And I don't go to church. I'm not a very religious person. But we talk about everything. We'd share everything. And I would say, okay, in this space, you're allowed to, and nothing was off limits. And I'd be as honest as I possibly could, even things that were kind of uncomfortable. I'm going to, so, and we still do that. I still communicate with them. My two younger boys is a little bit different. We don't talk as much, but, so I don't know if we have a tradition, I talk to each of them at least once a week. I've always, from the time they were born, it's never been more than 7 days. We're going to at least talk on the phone or whatever. But oddly enough, and this is, I'm almost embarrassed to say, as close as I am with my boys, being a grandparent is not as, I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm very good at that. I see a lot of people say, oh, my grandkids, and they move next door to them and they just want to babysit. My whole life I've had kids. I never bought a pair of shoes without making sure my kids had shoes. They always came first.
Yeah.
So now they're grown up and they're men. I'm like, this is my time. So my grandkids call and say, hey, Grandpa, we're going to come and spend the summer. And I'm like, maybe a couple of weeks, but because
Grandpa's got tea time.
I need time to be. So, and maybe because my grandkids always lived in different cities than I do, as opposed to growing up next door. But I just wish I was maybe a little bit more grandfatherly,
Well, you got thrown in baptism by fire, man. You got thrown into the gauntlet. I mean, it was like it's funny. I look at even my 20s, but I had a lot of time to just figure things out and like kind of. you at 18 were just like already, married and then starting that. Basically, you started adulthood real fast.
Yeah, yeah, that, yeah, really. And, I also I wish I was a little bit more reaching out, had a mentor or someone who I could. My brother was always, but my brother was, I always sort of looked out for my brother because my brother was a wild, what I mean? He would, and he'd go through changes and I'd kind of, I was always, I was always the younger brother who was the big brother. Um, but yeah, and I'm not saying, I mean, I've had my times, um, but yeah, no, and my kids, I think they were there. Certainly the two older boys, they probably raised me as much as I raised them. I mean, I'd go to an audition and I didn't get it. I'd come back and so frustrated and say, Dad, sit down. And Rocky, get him some water. And they say, now what's wrong? And they would kind of talk me down.
Tell us that we hear you. No, we hear you.
Yeah. And, Dad, you always told us that it's going to work out and, and it's okay. And they put their arm around me. And when the first year, I tried to be Mr. Mom. I tried to cook and I tried to do all this stuff. And they hated my cooking. So, and I never really had a, desire to do that whole. When I was a kid, I always had a job, and so my grandmother always took care of everything. So I never really had that domestic. And after a year, they said, Dad, we know how to cook. Mom taught us how to cook, and so they started doing all the cooking and most of the shopping. So we kind of, grew up together, I guess.
Oh, that's awesome. Man, well, this is such good stuff, and I'm so excited for Ghostbusters coming out, which is going to be. It's just cool to reboot that and have fun. What an amazing franchise that is. I'm curious. Has anyone talked to Rick Moranis in a while? Do we know what he's up to?
Well, I know that the studio really, really, really tried to get Rick to come aboard. And Rick made up his mind, as far as I know, that he was out of the business. And he hasn't wavered. He's the only guy I know, because most people would walk away, but then they're enticed to come back. But he's held to that. So, I think he's doing well. But, yeah,
all right. Well,
he left the business. So,
I know. I mean, he was. His role as the accountant was, of course, pivotal.
Oh yeah, so. No, he was great, and he's a wonderful actor. But
he is. He's amazing.
Yeah.
What are you working on right now? What are you excited about? What can we tell? What should we let the folks know that you're working on and stoked about?
Well, like I said, during the pandemic, I went to the Cayman Islands, shot a movie with Nicolas Cage, one of those action movies. I got a chance to sort of do a little fighting and shooting, and which these days I'm always somebody's dad, so it was kind of nice to be in the action, even though they kept saying, Ernie, you okay? I'm like, dude, I got this, So it was called Retirement Plan, and it was really a lot of fun working with him. My youngest son is a watchmaker, and so me and Nick, he loves watches. I mean, he collects watches, so we shared that. And then a while back, I did this movie in Vegas with Brian Cox, who's on Succession.
Oh, he's amazing.
He's wonderful. I first worked with him on Oz. He directed one of the episodes of Oz.
Oh, really?
And Kate Beckinsale called The Prisoner's Daughter. And so I think that's that. I don't know when these things are going to be released. And then I just got back from New York doing a couple episodes of this show called A City on a Hill, that the guys who produced, Tom Fontana, who created and produced Oz, it's his show, starring Kevin Bacon and I'm going blank on his name now, but it's a great show, and so that was fun. But yeah, I stay busy, very thankful, and going up to Canada to shoot a movie with Woody Harrelson. We did The Cowboy Way together years ago. So it'd be great to get together with him again. So it's coming up in a couple of weeks.
Man, Woody Harrelson, Nick Cage, Brian Cox. I mean, this is you got some talent there, man.
Yeah, no, I've been blessed. And, I came out to LA and I got a chance to work with Betty Davis. And, I've worked on a film with Laurence Olivier. We didn't have scenes together, but meeting him and
wow,
Ricardo Montalban, and just even now working with Jane Fonda, Lily Tomlin. I mean, I just feel so.
Oh, Lily Tomlin is one of the funniest, just charming. I mean, she's amazing.
And she's so down to earth and so amazing. And I just had so much fun, playing with her.
That's awesome.
So, yeah.
Oh, that's good. Great. That's great. Well, congratulations too on when a new Ghostbusters comes out. Are you like, oh, here we go again? Or are you like, actually, is it like at the stage now where you're like, I'm just pumped, like this is cool, like? Yeah, no, I'm excited mainly because the fans are excited about it, and they've been so supportive over the years, and so yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I think they're gonna love it. For my son's birthday, the studio gave us a screening of it, and it's amazing. Oh,
so it's really, and I was so happy because I wanted to, you kind of go, I hope it's good.
Yeah.
And you hate to talk about something when you don't really believe it, but this is really good. And
that's
I think
great.
the fans will be very, very happy.
That's great. When's the last time you drove Ecto 1?
It's been a while. I think last time I actually drove the car, they came to my house for some promotion. And we took it up to Hollywood, and the thing conked out.
Oh, really?
So yeah, it would always break down. It wasn't.
Ecto. What is Ecto 1 built on? What is the chassis?
It's a '59 Cadillac limousine.
Oh, okay.
So but yeah, no, when we were shooting, it would always break. They would get it running long enough to get the shot, and then it would break down. So,
oh, that's a shame. I wanted to pitch the studio on an idea, guys. Why don't we do a DoorDash in Ecto 1, or have Ecto 1 pull up to Burbank Airport, have the Ghostbusters try and go through TSA? I would be curious. Do you check the packs? Do you tell them that you have a whatever you call a thermonuclear device? To go on there. Does the ghost trap? Does X-rays violate that? So it'll be really. Really interesting.
Yeah. Well, a guy named Brian Fear, he's a prop maker out here. He built me a backpack. That's amazing. I mean, better than the ones we had in the movie. But I was going to a convention and I tried to carry it with me, and they opened it up, and the guy was just freaked out. I'm like, dude, have you never seen Ghostbusters? It's a bag. I mean, it's he was like, well, what does this thing do? Where do you? I'm like, no, it's not gonna, and every once in a while I meet somebody who's never seen Ghostbusters, so he just happened to be one of them. But
well, I'm so excited for this movie, and I'm so glad it's great, and it's just such an honor to get to talk with you, and I love the depth that you bring to everything, and I just love your optimism, especially your just openness to the miraculous and kind of what else going on there. I'm personally taking away that I shouldn't limit myself to what I ask for, and give myself permission to love what I love.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good message for us all, man.
Well, thank you, Ryan. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and I enjoyed it. So absolutely. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely, man. Well, next time we're going to get you camping in the actual bus, and we'll get you because for that one I was actually going to dress in a full. Target was selling Ghostbuster uniforms, and so I was going to actually insist that I show up in one, but well,
if you do it, I'll bring my jumpsuit, and
do you still have one?
We'll have fun. Yeah, I have my jumpsuits from the movie. So
there you go, man. All right, well that'd be fantastic. I would love that. Well, folks, you've been listening to I Went Camping with the legendary Ernie Hudson, and we will talk with you soon. Thanks so much, camper. Thanks for joining us, folks. If you want to help us out, and we're confident you do, go ahead and hit that subscribe button here on our YouTube channel. And if you ever feel like just listening to these, you can check us out on all major podcast streaming platforms by just searching for I Went Camping With. And there, you should also subscribe. Thanks again, folks.